Today I want to talk to you about something heavy. Ronnie James Dio will be proud. Heavy metal. Well, heavy metals actually. And how they affect everybody, you and me and everybody you know, in a very subtle way. And the importance of removing them. My dad keeps asking me why I keep buying books. Even if a few years ago I sent 80 books back from Australia to Italy, spending a lot of money. And I prefer paper nowadays, even when there are options like the Kindle, which I don't like. I bought and I sold it after 1 month. And the point is that books, even old books, and right now I'm reading books from 1936, 1940, which talk about things that are unbelievable about health. And these books are hard to find and pricey. The thing is, you can alter digital copies, but you cannot modify the paper because scripta manet. For example, something that they don't teach in school. In Babylon, according to the books I'm reading, there was no medical doctor for the state. Everybody that was falling sick was compelled to go to an office and explain how they heal themselves, so other people could benefit from the healing process and from their knowledge. And today we are in a world where not only the knowledge is not taught in school. Imagine we live in a world where we grew up in different areas of the world. There are thousands of plants. In Amazon only there are 38,000 plants. The pharmaceutical industry is taking these plants, taking the compounds and the chemicals inside and producing drugs. And in school we never learn about any of the plants surrounding us and how they can heal us. There are many plants that we walk past every day with healing properties, dandelion for example. So now we have a massive gap in between the world that it was and the world that we have today. And that gap, a few amount of people are benefiting from, while the rest of the world is paying them for the knowledge we're not given in school and we have to rely to when we get sick. So let's fix this. My story is very unique, and because of my story growing up is why I'm so passionate about health today, specifically heavy metals and teeth. I grew up from two parents that had severe teeth problems, to the point that I was reinforced over and over to the fact that eventually one day I would suffer from the same identical problems. Because I was not respecting the authority of my parents, I was not brushing my teeth, which resulted in the paradox to complete itself and me having major teeth problems growing up. And back then I thought it was normal. My parents have it, so I'm gonna get it because of genetics, right? But the point is, at 37 years old, by reading a book from 1936, I started connecting the dots. And the book was from a dentist that believed that dentists should not exist. So he traveled the world with a wife for 4 years, visiting all the populations that were not have been in contact with the modern industrialized civilization, and they did not use at all their food. I'm talking about Eskimos, South American tribes, Aboriginals from Australia, Maori, Filipinos, and so on. And eventually he found that, and he documented with photos in the book, that these people had 0 to 3% of decays. The face was completely different, the body was completely different. They were giving birth in 20 minutes with no complications, unassisted, to the point that there is a description of a woman from an Eskimo tribe that had 7 children, and while the husband was minding his business, doing his work, went on the tent by herself on the igloo and gave birth within 20 minutes to the 8th child. And this makes you think, because every day we are reinforced on the fact that pregnancy, well, giving birth is so hard. It's a 10, 12, 4 hours process. There are complications. But the dentist in this book from 1940, 1936, 1940, documents that it's all because of our modern diet, which is processed food, which is basically sugar and flours, which are introduced. So looking through this book, the part of the teeth came up, and it states many times over and over that if a parent has problems, issues with the teeth, the direct result is flat feet, which I do have. And then I started thinking, heavy metals play a big part in this as well. And my dad was working at typography, breathing lead all the time. My mom started having problems with her teeth at 9 years old. And it made no sense to me. How can you have teeth problem at 9 years old? And then by reading this book, I figured out that my dad was working at typography, and my grandpa from my mom's side was a painter. So working with paints with heavy metals inside, and nobody made the connections back then. I mean, we had asbestos, and there were playgrounds for kids with asbestos in it. It took some time to catch up, but today this should be stressed over and over. And in school we don't spend 1 hour, studying nutrition, health, and the connection with the surrounding environment to our body, the food, the plants, nothing, which is strange. But the problem with heavy metals is that they don't leave your body unless you force them to. They get into your body, they stay around a little bit, and then they surpass the blood-brain barrier and they go and sit in your brain. So unless you eliminate them, if one day you will have a child, as a male, as a female, the heavy metals will be passed through your sperm or through your ovaries to your kid. And is not correlation, I cannot say this, but there are data coming up and there are more and more pointing in that direction that heavy metals are directly correlated to autism as well. Because basically, and I'm quoting some doctors I follow, medical medium, a guy called Dr. Charlie, which I have a course of. Basically, the explanation is that heavy metals are conducting electricity. So they sit in a specific area, random area of your brain in different quantities with different qualities of heavy metals. And because of that specific area, you have a different kind of autism in different degrees, because the electricity is enhanced by these heavy metals sitting in specific areas, the language, the emotions, the memory, and so on. And you are heavily influenced by it. Ronald Reagan in 1986 was confronted, and in this I'm quoting one of the doctors I'm following, was confronted by a CEO of a vaccine company. And they said to him, for every dollar we make, we spend $50 paying back the families that had a case of, how do I say this? Well, the child suffered from some unforeseen consequences directly related to the vaccine. So Ronald Reagan in 1986 passed a law, the National Injury Childhood Protection, I think it was called, where every vaccine manufacturer is exempted from liability from any damages that the product has caused to the child or the children. Now, there is a tax, I read, of 75 cents for every vaccine that is sold, and these taxes gets accumulated, and eventually when there are some damages, consequences for the vaccination, they use the taxes to repay the families. From 1986 to 2023, around $5 billion were paid in claims by the government to the people that experienced some direct damages from vaccines. And this was not paid by the manufacturers, but by the government with the taxes collected from the companies and the taxpayers' money. You can research this stuff, it's unbelievable. And from that day, then 1986, there was one case on 3,000 of kids suffering from autism, and now we are sitting on 1 on 34. Things have changed, and I'm not saying this is correlation or causation, but well, the data are out there. You can make your own research and figure out for yourself. The most common symptoms of heavy metals stored in the body are fatigue, psoriasis, lung infection, cognitive development that is slowed down, so a kid is not facing the right milestones while growing up. Maybe there is some speech impairment or learning issues, ADHD, and so on. The heavy metals will go somewhere. For my dad was breathing this lead all the time. The heavy metals went in the teeth. They formed some sacs of pus, of infection, and eventually when he was 50 he had to remove all his teeth. And you want to remove it growing up because it doesn't only cause an issue to you but to your children if you want to have some. And this is the fun study they made in the 1980s. The vaccine industry made a study on heavy metals, and they said after 10 days the heavy metals will leave your brain. And some doctors stood up and said, wait a minute, what do you mean they leave the body? So they ran an independent study. They saw that after 10 days, the heavy metals that were injected through vaccines, they were in fact leaving the body, but they were surpassing the blood-brain barrier, going into the brain and sitting there somewhere. Now, for an adult, maybe you can feel it, maybe not. There are some effects anyway. For a kid, you will definitely feel the difference. And when I was a kid, I think I had to undergo 7 compulsory vaccinations. And today the number is 15 or 20. I'll put the right number here. I will check for you. But the point is, heavy metals, no bueno. In any case, if you believe in conspiracies or not, no good. You have to remove them from your body. Because if you accumulate them and then you decide to have a baby, your toxic environment will become your child starting point. Do yourself a favor, test for heavy metals. There are simple tests to do on the micrograms of heavy metals that you have, on the amount and the quality of heavy metals you have, and find some good detox. And for me, the most delicious, I was looking forward to wake up in the morning to have this detox that I used to have, comes from Medical Medium. I'm not taking ownership of this, but I know it works. So basically, you wake up in the morning, you do your lemon water thing, so you cleanse your intestines, you go to the bathroom. So it's lemon water, warm water, and some honey, organic honey, not the one in plastic bottles. And then I used to have 1 banana, 1 orange, wild organic blueberries, spirulina, barley grass juice powder, some algae, Atlantic dulse flakes. Atlantic because in the Atlantic there is less pollution than in the Pacific. And then I think that's it. You blend everything with a little bit of water, you drink it, and eventually the heavy metals are magnetized because of all this mix, and they are flushed outside of the body. This is a long process. It will take a while. Do it every day for 6 months and judge by yourself. In the book, it specifically states that spirulina is way better than chlorella, because chlorella, it's a very lazy powder, it's a very lazy herb, because it takes the heavy metal, works a little bit with it, and then it drops it again. Spirulina doesn't have laziness problems, so it takes the heavy metal and it carries it out. And that can be with your pee, with your elimination process, with your sweat, and so on. The important thing is to not do this if you're having a toxic diet. You cannot out-supplement a toxic diet, so you have to give it a hand. Have a healthy diet, put this together with it, and you will see positive results. I'm reading through this because I don't want to give you misleading information, and it's important that you get every single one right. So these are some symptoms of heavy metals present in the body. If it's a check, you'll determine by yourself. Chronic fatigue that sleep does not fix, brain fog and poor concentration, joint and muscle pain with no clear cause, mood instability and depression, low testosterone and hormonal disruption, poor sperm quality and motility, weak immune system, recurring infections, gut problems and digestive issues, psoriasis, which I have, eczema, chronic skin inflammation, dental decay, and enamel weakness from an early age, neurological symptoms, numbness, coordination issues, slow cognitive development in children, developmental delays, learning difficulties, behavioral issues, flat feet, my dad, me, and eventually my child if I don't do anything about it. Autism, 1 in 3,000 50 years ago to 1 in 36, not 34, today. Not claiming causation, but the question deserves asking. And I'm very passionate about cinema. I remember that when Robert DeNiro organized Tribeca Film Festival, his own festival, and put a movie, a documentary about autism and vaccines, he had to remove it because he was threatened for his life. This was 10, 12 years ago maybe. Back then it was even hard to have a conversation. And now the conspiracy theorists are making things louder and louder, to the point that it's not an excuse anymore to address this as a conspiracy, because curiosity deserves inspection. And if it's a conspiracy, too bad. But at least there was some work done without some conflict of interest. The problem is I had most of these and I called these normal because I thought that's how the way it is, or is genetic, which is bullshit. Last year I found a book which was quite hard to find, because if somebody tells you about this book, you'll say, sure, I'll buy it. But if you have to research this book specifically, it's hard to find, even on Amazon. And the book was from Weston Price, the dentist I told you about. And the book name was Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. A book that was started in 1936, was published around 1940. And if you ask any dentist about this, they will either not know or not address it correctly. And if they don't know, it's because it's not in their curriculum, because it's not meant to be taught. I believe, and I repeat this many times over, that one generation purpose is to make the next one better. My grandpa and my grandma, they did not know about heavy metal detox. My parents didn't know. And in the last 5-6 years, I'm proud to say that I taught them so much about food, diets, nutrition, detoxing, and they implemented some of the stuff. But I know, and now you do know too, so there is no excuse on getting healthier, detoxing, and acquiring some knowledge that can improve your life and the one of the people that you love. The things that we used to do for thousands of years has been obliterated completely from a businessman at the beginning of 1900, and all the practices and the common knowledge that we have now, they don't work anymore. Now we completely rely on doctors, which today, and there are some good doctors there, today they just became glorified drug dealers without any deep knowledge about nutrition and natural healing, because it's not in their curriculum unless they study on their own. I think this is the most powerful thing you can learn for yourself or from others, to create absolute health, which means not having to rely to anybody else to be fit and thriving, not to the pharmaceuticals, not to the surgeon, and not to the doctor. To get in a deep communion with your body so you understand each feeling. You can dissect this feeling, this taste, this sensation, and you know your surroundings so well that when you're walking into a park, you can recognize plants and flowers and herbs and know exactly their effects on your body, the healing properties. And I know that life is busy. There are engineers and doctors and parents. I'm classifying parents to professionals here because it is a job and it's very time consuming, time investing, but this should be the basis. And unless we have an educational system that prioritizes this kind of knowledge, we will always be stuck in this loop where we need a professional to fix our vessel, the most important thing that we have, which is our health. And for men serious about cleaning their own environment before it becomes your children's problem, I'm running a one-on-one consultation that you can book through the link I put in the description. I'll see you in the next one.